Jesus said, I am come that ye might have life and that more abundantly. Abundant life. And we live in a society that has kind of shifted into survival mode. I'm going to do what I got to do to get by. I'm just barely making it. I'm scuffling, I'm struggling, I'm hustling. God didn't tell me to do any of those things. He told me to live. And when we consider that, and when we consider the fact that Jesus, God, the Father, He has provided everything that we need. It's already here. All we have to do is trust Him and believe Him. And if we trust Him and if we believe Him and if we have faith, then we will obey Him. And that is the key to getting everything that you want in life. You don't have to settle. You don't have to compromise. And believe me, whatever God is, whatever it is that God has for you, no one can take that from you. Believe the Lord. Trust the Lord. Live for the Lord and allow Him to bless you. There is 10,000 blessings just to satisfy the fold. One time my mom, she came into the sanctuary. She had not been there in a while. And she just made a simple statement. She said, God's got something for everybody and He has enough for everybody. So don't allow anything or anyone to block you from getting what God has for you. As always, I am so excited to be here for the Sanctuary Sunday School. And I'm really excited because this is the last week of this quarter, but it's also the last week of this season. As of the first Sunday in September, we start season 3 of the Sanctuary Sunday School. It's our second year anniversary, and I am so excited. I thank you so much. You have blessed me. I can't even express how much you have blessed me. Everybody who has been sending donations and partnering with me, everybody who's been watching every week, and everybody who's been commenting. As of next week, we will have a new set. I'm rolling out new things. You want to go to the website, www.thesanctuary.academy. You want to go ahead and subscribe not only to the YouTube channel, but put your name on our mailing list because I'm going to be sending out more study materials. Every year we got to step it up. So I have so much in store. Again, I thank you, and I'm so excited about this new season for the Sanctuary Sunday School. This week's subject is Isaac's abundant blessing, and we're still in the book of Genesis. And as we know, Isaac is Abraham and Sarah's son, and he is the son of promise. He's the son that God was going to use to manifest this amazing covenant that He made with Abraham. And we see here in this lesson that there was a famine in the land of Canaan. And we see so many similarities. Last week we talked about how Rebecca was barren. So Isaac's wife was barren, just like his father's wife was barren. And now there is a famine when Isaac is there, just like there was one when Abraham was there. And so we see these parallelisms. And when there was a famine with Abraham, he actually went down to Egypt. And when he went down to Egypt, he had a little bit of trouble because he ended up losing his wife temporarily when he went down there. So now we see Isaac finds himself in a very similar situation where there is a famine. And so the text says that he went down to Gerar. Now, with the where that city is situated, it appears that Isaac may have been headed toward Egypt, just like his father had been. But we see here that God made a very specific request to Isaac not to go to Egypt. He told him to stay in the land that he had promised to his father Abraham. And so he puts Isaac in a position where he had to stay there and to trust him instead of going where he knew that there was food. And that just jumped out at me right there because sometimes our blessing is in staying there, waiting and trusting and believing in God. We don't have to leave what God has given us and go someplace else in order for survival. See, if he had gone to Egypt to get food in order to survive, he would have missed this blessing. We're talking about Isaac's abundant blessing. So Isaac decided that he was going to obey the Lord, and he stayed there. And the text said that Isaac was blessed and he increased, and that he planted his crop, and in that first year, he got a bountiful crop of 100-fold. And this is very significant because, as we know, God had already blessed Abraham. Abraham was rich. He had cattle. He had all of this stuff. And so now God is blessing Isaac in this land. And this is significant for a couple of reasons. When you look at Abraham, and this is something that kind of just jumped out at me, as parents, as people of God, we want to live our lives in such a way that we leave a legacy of blessings for our children and our posterity. We don't want it to always be about me, myself, and I and mine and just suck up the resources of the world. But we want to leave an impact. We want to do something that's going to last. And so Abraham's righteousness and his faith prompted God to bless his seed. And so Isaac was born under this blessing. And that's something to consider. And that's something to strive toward. And then we can reverse that because Isaac also had to obey the Lord and have faith for himself. Just because his father had faith, and just because his father was blessed, and just because God had already promised to bless his seed, it did not mean that there was no requirements for Isaac. He has to live right for himself. And that was a lesson for me too, because I tell you all the time, my dad is a pastor and my mom is a missionary, but I cannot get into heaven on their works. I've got to work out my own soul salvation. My mom would tell me that all the time. And my dad would say, every tub got to sit on its own bottom. So at some points in our lives, it doesn't matter who our parents are, we've got to seek the Lord for ourselves. We've got to live for God for ourselves. We got to have faith. We had to have trust, and we've got to obey the Lord. And that's how we keep those blessings flowing from generation to generation. And we see that Isaac did just that, and God blessed him, and he increased tremendously. And that's what God will do for you. And we see that the Philistines, they saw this and they became envious. They became angry. And this is very timely because we see this today sometimes when you're doing well and God is blessing you, and people don't realize that your blessings are a result of your obedience and faith in God, and that you're only accessing what God has given you. And so sometimes people will come against you, not realizing that that's something they probably don't want to do. So the Philistines, they came against him, and Isaac had go ahead and he had opened up the wells that his grandfather Abraham had dug, and he was drawing water from these wells. And the Philistines, they came to him and they told him, look, this is our well. And they wanted the well. And instead of Isaac fighting them for what was rightfully his, he said, fine. And he moved away. And he called that well Esek because it means contention. There was contention surrounding that well. So he gave it up and he moved on, and he dug him another well. And then when he dug this other well, here they come again. And they said, we're taking this well too. This is our well. And so again, Isaac gave them that well, and he named that well Sitnah because it meant opposition, and there was opposition surrounding that well, so he let them have it. And so then he went and he dug him another well, and this well, there was no opposition, there was no contention, and he named this well Rehoboth. And Rehoboth means wide spaces. And it was like God made room for him in the land that he had promised him. And he was able to draw from this well. And that is such a powerful, powerful lesson because, again, when God promises something to you and when God has chosen to bless you abundantly, no one can take it away from you. And it was like Isaac said, okay, you want these little wells? Fine, take the wells, because I already know the blessing that's on my life. I already know what God has in stores for me. I have already experienced the outpouring of God's blessing. So there's nothing you can say or do that can make me turn around. There's nothing you can do that'll make me turn on God and not believe God, not trust God. There's nothing that you can do to cause me to lose what God had given me. And Isaac was so focused on blessing God and walking into his inheritance until he didn't have time for the contention. He didn't have time for the opposition. He let them do what they needed to do. And see, sometimes there's a saying, it's not a biblical saying, but it says that you have to pick your battles. Some things are not worth fighting for. There are some things, that this is lightweight stuff. There are things that you don't risk everything that you've ever dreamed of fighting for something trivial. And so I love the fact that, he was willing to work and to go dig these wells. And I thought about that, and that lesson just hit home for me because I work in a creative field. And I have done things. I have had people steal my work and photocopy it and use it. And this has been preachers, pastors, mothers, and whomever. And you experience a lot of that. But I learned a long time ago, people can steal my ideas, but they can't steal my creativity because my creativity comes from God. So if you want that little idea, if you want to copy that, if you felt like you need to steal that, go right ahead. That's fine. Because before you can even take advantage of what you took from me, God has blessed me with twice as much, something twice as good, something 10 times better. And that is my life. So that's something that I know to be true. And so I want you to be encouraged because sometimes it looks like the evil people are winning. Sometimes it looks like they are making advances against the kingdom of God. That is not true. That is not possible. God is in control of everything, and God is more powerful. He will never let you down. He will never forsake you. Everything that you need is in the hand of God. All you have to do is have the faith and trust Him. When we speak of a famine and there not being any food, there's no food. It doesn't matter how many cattle you have if there's no food, if there's nothing for them to graze in. When we speak of a well, when you're talking about a desert climate, wells are critical. As we know, you cannot survive without water. You can't feed animals without water. You can't water your grain without the water. So these were crucial. We're talking about the two most essential things of life, food and water. And that is what was threatened with Isaac in this lesson today. And we see in the midst of that, what does it say? Our subject, God blessed Isaac abundantly. In the midst of your situation that seems like it's going to be desolate, in the midst of your situation that seems like there's no way out, you may be feeling like you're going to lose everything. You may be facing a grave situation, and it's in that time where God is trying to bless you abundantly, but you've got to not be afraid to make the right decision and to trust the Lord. And you don't have time to be fighting. Now, I've said this so many times, especially in my position, and I know that some of you have experienced it as well. People will come against you, they will fight you, and you haven't done anything. They'll undercut you, they'll lie on you, they'll talk about you. I don't have time to clap back at nobody. I don't have time to tell you off and set you straight. I don't have time for that. Because, see, I got wells to dig. Because I got blessings. I got blessings that's flowing all down. I got blessings that's rising up out of my belly. I got blessings that's just overflowing. I have generations and generations of blessings that's flowing through my life. I don't have time to argue with you. See, when you have that mindset and you focus on the Lord, when you know your background, when you know your history. See, Isaac came from a good background. Isaac thought about back. I'm sure he probably thought about back at that mountain when the Lord provided the ram and spared his very life. How you this well? You want to fight me over a well? Take it. You can have it because my God is bigger than that. And I love the faith, these lessons, this entire series talking about faith have been such a blessing, and they're so timely. Listen, do not be deceived by the enemy. We are living in such turbulent times. Do not be distracted by what you see in the news. Do not be distracted by what you're seeing in your community. Don't be distracted by what you're seeing on your job or even in your church. Remember, famine, no well, no food, no water, and God blessed Isaac abundantly. We are living in desolate times. We are living in times that are they're spiritually barren. We are living through a spiritual drought. We're living through a spiritual famine, but you can still feast on the Lord right in the midst of everything, and God will bless you abundantly, and you can walk and live in that abundant life that Jesus promised. You can walk and live under the blessings of Abraham that God promised, because that's who God is and that's what God does. And I love this part because after this, it says that Isaac moved a little further and he went to Beersheba. Beersheba was the place of his childhood, and he went there. And then what did he do? He built an altar and he worshiped the Lord. Worship the Lord. I love that throughout the Old Testament, every time God did something for them, they built an altar and they worshiped the Lord. Worship the Lord. Thank the Lord. You ever heard somebody say that thanking Him makes room for more? And that's something, I had to really put into practice because I'm a planner and I'm always trying to push and get to the next level. And so sometimes God will bless me, He'll deliver. And then as soon as I get one thing, my mind shifts. And okay, well, now I got this. I got to go do that. And God had to say, wait a minute, stop and say thank you. Thank me for what you got. Be grateful and calm yourself down. I got this. And so that's what we have to do. Sometimes we're striving in this world. It's so fast paced and we're moving. We're just going from place to place to place. And we're scooting all over everywhere. But we're leaving God behind. But when you have patience and when you have faith and when you trust the Lord, He will lead you. He will guide you. And there's this saying, that I really dislike about hustling and grinding. That's not what God told me to do. God told me to believe Him, trust Him, have faith, obey Him. And when you do that, you can just ease through stuff and you can walk in and you can keep your composure and you can stay calm, cool, and collected because you already know the outcome of a situation. Isn't it a beautiful thing to walk into a battle, to walk into a situation knowing the outcome, knowing that you've already won? All I got to do is show up and I win. All I got to do is show up and I win. All I've got to do is show up and I win. You show up for God, God will show up for you. He is a promise keeper. He is a miracle worker. He's a way maker. He is everything that you need. All you have to do is trust Him, believe Him, obey Him, and walk in the abundant blessings of God.